Welcome, Spartans, to the Podcast Evolved Book Club. I am your host, Aaron, and with me this week we've got the slightly sick Krysta.
Hello.
And we've got the very healthy David.
Hello, everybody.
We are coming to you again with another book club from Tales from Slipspace. This episode we are covering the story Undefeated. Prepare yourselves, this one's a bit of a...
sad story.
It is.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough one as Halo ones go. It's up there. Okay, we'll roll through some of the details first before we get into this. As we said, this is called Undefeated. It's in Tales from Slipspace. The author is John Jackson Miller and Eric Nguyen.
Yes.
The publisher is Dark Horse, of course. It's available in hardcover and digital. It had two different release dates, so the digital version came out on the 25th of October 2016. Wow. That long ago. It doesn't feel like that long ago.
Very long.
The print version came out November 29th, 2016, and this is 24 pages long. This might be the longest story in Tales from Slipspace.
It's pretty meaty. I was surprised how long it was.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger ones.
It's right up there. So to set the scene for this before we kind of get into it, this takes place in October 2558. If you want an exact sort of time to get your bearings, it's roughly around the time in Halo 5 that the Guardians are spreading.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
This takes place on a ship called the UNSC Nereid.
Yeah.
And it's a mixed cargo hauler ferrying a platoon of Marines and a group of construction workers in space. And they have the unfortunate side effect of being stopped by a Guardian.
Uh-oh.
I didn't think it was a Guardian. I thought it was the AI abandoned them.
They mentioned a pulse and a light outside.
Oh, let me check that again. I think you might be right.
Which I put down to being the Guardian. They don't actually see a Guardian, but I assume that's because they were in Slipspace at the time and they exited Slipspace.
Yeah.
I only took it because the third panel has Cortana giving the message to the created, telling them to come and join her. So I immediately thought that the flash was them dropping out of Slipspace because the AI left the ship, essentially, and switched everything off when it did.
They describe it as some kind of energy pulse. I assumed that was the pulse from the Guardians that shuts everything down.
Totally could be. Totally.
That was the theory I was going on anyway, but whatever happens, we don't get an exact what happens, but these poor souls are then trapped in space, potentially hundreds of years away from their destination. I think they call this they even said in the story that this was supposed to be a milk run, just a simple delivery mission. Mm-hmm. These troops and these engineers were being dropped off at this planet with some supplies and that was it. And now suddenly they're trapped in space with no power.
It's terrifying.
It is, and this happened to an awful lot of people in Halo 5.
You imagine way more than we know about. There must be a lot of abandoned ships out there. In the in-between spaces. A lot of Sci-Fi do kind of episodes or shows where they touch on this kind of component, like the truly emptiness of space, and that when something goes wrong, do you know what I mean, you are on your own.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
All their systems are shutting down. There's nothing.
I kind of like that about this, in that they don't really touch on it much these days about the hardships of space. We have gravity plating, no one floats around anymore. No one worries about the air recyclers or anything, or heat loss. Whereas now suddenly you've got this group of people on this ship that are panicking about all the little things.
Yeah, I love when they talk about going EVA, that they lose power, they lose heat and air every time they open the airlock, which you don't really think about. And you're constantly, when you're losing heat that much, that fast, that you need to conserve heat.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we're going to see a lot more tales like this because AIs are revolting, which means there's going to be a lot more system failures because there's not AIs running everything anymore.
I mean, the captain of the ship drowns in his own shower because the gravity goes and the water just fills.
Yeah, that was cool. I appreciated that.
Yeah, imagine just little details like that of when you have something so ingrained in a society, i.e. humans being reliant on AIs, and you take that away, it's just how things fall apart. Obviously, humanity at that time needs to learn, again, old ways of doing things.
I think the thing I kind of like about this is at the end of Halo 5, when the Guardian finds the Infinity and they pulse the system, but the Infinity escapes, a good chunk of the Infinity's escort ships that were in orbit of that planet suddenly just drift free. There's Pelicans, there's a couple of, I think, frigates that are all just floating. And I always wondered, what happened to those people? Did they get off that? And then you read this story and you're like, oh, They were just fucked.
No.
Well, if they're around a planet, there's a possibility for assist, but I'm guessing the Guardian's probably going to kill everyone.
There's different stories, and they do touch upon it in one or two of the short stories. I think Matt Forbeck's one did, that Cortana was rounding up those humans eventually. There was rescue operations going on where armatures were going and taking people and rounding them up. So a lot of them may not have been left, but obviously Cortana probably didn't think of or account for everybody in her crazy madness. There are like abandoned stations and stuff like that where people are left defenseless, but other ones there is a small measure of rescue happening.
But like we said, this one seems particularly bleak
because you see the slow descent of this kind of two sides. There's the military side and the kind of civilian side, and like they come at odds at several times in the stories of what to do, and you see like the civilian kind of commander who's actually in charge of the ship, the second in command, assumes command, just giving them menial jobs and duties to keep people busy. The kind of sad story in the end, I'll let you tell it, Aaron, is kind of like, I don't know what you would do in that situation, but it's dire.
They start off, they have to figure out how to make some power. They realise even their torches don't work. So then they have the Marines and the soldiers in the gym wired up to the gym equipment to generate power to keep the air on, which I thought was kind of cool because it's like, you know, everyone coexisted and cooperated for a while. And then people start to get testy and they try to come up with different ideas on how to power the ship. And one they come up with is they decide to link some nukes together to jumpstart the Slipspace drive. But it doesn't work, and then things get a bit testy, and there's fighting a couple of times in this. And then the civilian that's in charge comes up with a plan. She comes up with a plan during like a hostage situation. The Marines on the ship try to take the ship, and the civilian crew fall back to the cargo bay, and they're holding off. And then the leader of the Marines, what is her name? Hang on, I have it here. Major Tanris.
Yeah.
The other one is Lieutenant Coffee. She's the civilian leader. They like meet in the middle of the cargo bay and they float and they talk. And then Coffee has this epiphany when they're talking about the nukes, where she's like, oh, ships years ago used to use nukes to power themselves for propulsion. You put a plate on the back of the ship, you shape the nuke, you detonate the nuke, and it pushes the ship forward. And we've got tons of nukes and we've got tons of equipment from the construction guys, and we might be able to propel ourselves close to where we're going. She's like, you know, it's not enough to get us into Slipspace, but like we might be able to get there faster. So everyone like dives into it and they're figuring it all out, and it's the closest it comes to like a Rocky montage of Marines moving nukes and welding the things, and everything looks really positive. And then it cuts back to Coffee, who's sitting in a very frozen ship window drinking whiskey by the bottle.
Yeah.
A woman after my own heart.
Yes. And the Marine major comes back in and confronts her and is like, you're either really stupid or you fucked this up on purpose because you didn't take into account our nukes are much stronger. And then it suddenly dawns on the major that, oh, you did do this on purpose. And then Coffee basically explains it to her that there's no way they're going to be rescued, and she knew they were dead from the moment the power cut out, and it was just a question of trying to stop them killing each other, or as she eventually figured out.
Yeah, it was like, do we let them just kill each other and die a slow, painful death of not being able to breathe, being cold, you know, that slow descent, you know, starvation, or do we go out with a bang?
Yeah, it's just like, you know, it's basically, do we get them to unknowingly work towards their own death, but they'll be united and like positive and happy the whole time?
Which is, well, I wouldn't say happy, but I would say busy.
Hopeful.
But I'd never say happy.
I don't know, if I thought I might get back to a planet, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're trying to shave time off, and they know they can't go to Slipspace, and they were decades away from places, so you're in a situation where, kind of like Halo Wars, where the Spirit of Fire is just everybody can go into hyperspace, and it takes them however long. I can't remember at the time. It's supposed to be like 70 years away from Earth, where they were trying to get back on with just with no Slipspace drive. And this ship doesn't have that. They don't have the facility to kind of go into cryosleep. They have no power.
True. I wonder, do they even have cryotubes anymore?
Probably not on a ship like this.
Yeah, Slipspace has come a long way since the old days of Halo where everyone had to get into a tube and be defrosted again. I'm wondering, like, they might, even if they had power, they might not have been an option for them.
Well, they weren't doing a long enough journey to warrant cryotubes. Cryotubes are for very long journeys for people to... Cryotubes are for month-long journeys because then the ship doesn't have to stock as much food and as much supplies.
I kind of feel like cryotubes used to be for all the unnecessary crew, though, because all journeys were kind of long journeys until recently.
Yeah.
Until the Forerunner Slipspace drives.
It's not until they found those drives that they got there quicker.
But I wouldn't think that every ship would be equipped with one by now, because it's only been a couple years.
But even the sensors and the Slipspace tech and stuff, like even from the Covenant systems, like I think... In one of the books in the old days, Cortana like manages to seriously improve her slipspace computing just by seeing what the Covenant were doing.
Yeah.
I'd imagine like they've got quicker anyway.
Yeah. Either way, I imagine that they were never going to shave that much time off. Maybe a few years, let's say, whatever. And maybe it was it was a fool's errand anyway, but they were trying to give each other hope. And then the comic just ends with just a ship in empty space, with you knowing that they're building their own doom.
Yeah, which, like, it's, as Halo comics go, it's up there pretty dark with, like, I'm trying to think what goes with that. And not even the Mona Lisa. I'm feeling more, what do you call the one with the brutes out of Evolutions?
Oh,
where they're torturing
Stomping on the heels of a fuss?
Stomping on the heels of a fuss. I kind of feel like it's there where, like, that's a kind of dark story where they're being tortured by these brutes and they kind of have no real way to escape until near the end, and then the guy's betrayed. And I feel like that's a kind of dark, sort of similar story, which we don't get very often.
It's very nice to have it in Halo, honestly, just because you kind of see a different side of the universe, not the hopeful, heroic side, but the people are struggling to survive side. The Cortana thing doesn't just affect Chief and the gang because it's inconvenient for them to do stuff. It affects these people who are stranded out in space and are going to die.
Yeah, and I think Chief does call Cortana on that in Halo 5 in terms of, like, how many innocents did you kill? That she would know that she knows the number of, like, people that are, like, either stranded or people that died when the Guardians rose, and he does call her out on it, and there's a moment of hesitancy that you see in her, but she's still whatever.
It's a necessary sacrifice for the cause. Risk thousands for billions.
And it is terrible to witness this, because you imagine humanity has no clue what's happening, and all these people on these fringes are just kind of abandoned. And it's
they get
really
they get that Cortana, like, hey, we're taking over, yo, and then everybody's confused, and then everything happens at once. So
it's a dark time.
It's interesting, and it's interesting to see practicality as well. Like, the ship doesn't have anywhere to go because of this, and this. Kind of the inner workings of space travel and the risks of space travel. Because we, like you said earlier, we overlook that so much in the Halo universe because everything was automated. Everything was pretty much perfect, yeah.
The other thing with this is, I think when I finished Halo 5, this was what I was missing, because you had, like, no concept of what happened around the universe, because...
It was kind of vague, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of ends, and you're like, well, the Infinity made it away, but, like, I can't see what else... I didn't even realise in Halo 5 at the end that the planet they were around was Earth. I read recently that apparently that's Earth that the Infinity's in orbit of. Was that in... I think that might have been in Bad Blood.
I think I knew that.
I didn't realise it was Earth. I thought it was somewhere else. I think what threw me was... there's something on the surface of the planet that looked round and forerunnery, and I wondered, did I not put two and two together and think that was the portal in Africa?
Yeah.
There's something lit from it, but, like, I didn't even grasp any of that, and you had no real concept of, like, what's going on. You used to get the odd hint, but then stories like this... like, really solidify it. There's a few out there. There's a couple of short stories and fractures as well that go into stuff like this, and they just show, like, the state of what's happening to everyone else who hasn't been lucky enough to either be evacuated, like Osman and that, or who were able to escape, like, the Infinity. So even though it's dark, like, I appreciate it showing you things that are going on around the universe.
I do too.
Yeah.
Some of these collections of stories, either the short stories or the comics like this, they're great. Just really fleshing out in small little segments different areas with different tones of the universe. Like Krysta said, it really does bring in the dark kind of sci-fi horror of like the difficulties of space travel that you don't consider. It's just cool to see, and the art's real nice. Got a really muted, dark tone through the whole thing because there's no power. It's a good bit of like radioactive green that's pretty clear and unhealthy, as you imagine. And it ends just as dark as it begins.
Yeah, like in the bit where it ends, I like the fact like you can't see any of their eyes. They don't look up anymore. They're just kind of like dark and grey, and everything's very
Something
sad.
I also really like about this is if this wasn't in a book that has Halo on the front, you wouldn't know this is a Halo story.
Very true.
It's just a space story. It's just a story about people. I like how they didn't have to feel like they had to put anything innately Halo in this story. Hey, we gotta name drop this or talk about that or have an elite here somewhere.
Yeah.
Like I've been reading a lot of Expanse books lately, and that's something like this story feels like it could totally belong in one of those later books.
Could totally fit anywhere.
Yeah, they're very big into their like dangers of space and all that stuff, which is, like I said, something we don't normally get a lot of from Halo, which is nice and refreshing.
I get loads of Expanse vibes. I'm loving the show, but like, yeah, totally. It's a good spot, Krysta. Like, the only thing iconically Halo in this are the weapons.
Yeah.
Are like the ARs and the few panels that they are shown in. But like everything else, even to the ship design, that's generic freighter, you know. They mention like Havoc mines, which we know are Halo related, but that's about it really. The nuclear mines. Everything else is pretty generic human. In space. Misery.
Yeah. Misery in space.
Overall thoughts, I think, does it sound like we're all in agreement? Thumbs up on this one?
Thumbs up on very sad.
It's dark. It gives you a good context for Halo 5, the ramifications of what Cortana did, and I think everyone should know that going in, that it isn't just these big spaceships that left off, that there are people left behind and consequences to what Cortana did. It's good to see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think then that will do us for this one. Like we said, they're all pretty short stories and tales from Slipspace, so we're just going to be knocking our way through all of them, with the exception of a certain poker night that we're not going to speak of. Yeah, no one's enthusiastic about that one. Just while we're here, don't forget to go and check out the website. You can go over and have a look there. Chances are by the time you hear this, Ian might have done more stuff to it. Ian never stops doing stuff to it. And if he hasn't done that, he's probably done something on Patreon, so you can check it out over there too. And I think that'll do us until next time. Evolved.